I know.
So the agenda is not on eScribe because they switched to a new eScribe. Somewhere along the way, Jenna no longer has access to the templates to put the agendas on eScribe. So she literally can't do it.
Is there
And I had her check into it again yesterday because I said, the first question I'm going to get is what agenda is not on eScribe.
Is there an in-camera?
Yes.
Well, I couldn't get into the in-camera because I couldn't remember the password. Now my passwords work. And I was in Manitoba and I couldn't.
Good morning. How are you? Good yourself. Not bad.
Now I gotta find that email again.
Sorry, always the state.
Yes, okay.
Sound check. Thanks, Ryan.
You sound fine.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the same as mine. It's the new computers.
Did you send the printer?
No, I haven't. It won't stable because of
Yeah, just doing one test just to make sure I
send it right away.
Does anyone like a coffee? No, there's no coffee service.
I got my own things.
Morning, John. How's your travel?
It was good.
Yeah.
It was good. Uneventful. Nice day. Traffic's heavier than normal. Well, both ways. We were going down a week ago, so last Friday, Friday.
Yep.
So, it's pretty busy going back way. So this is Friday.
Yeah.
Where are we going?
Friday.
Oh,
Just an average Friday.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but there might have been a small accident or an accident that held traffic up a bit. But between Princeton and Hope, I have never seen as many cars. Like it was bumper to bumper. Then it was backed up for 20 kilometers, maybe because of this accident, or 25 kilometers, somewhere in there. It was busy. So busy. So I don't know why. And it was busy yesterday as well, both ways. And so anyway.
well, visit
But they
Canada.
travel, yeah.
Visit Canada.
There you go.
That's what was crossing my mind too. I'm like,
Might be.
how many people are not like just going south, and so they're staying.
I just want that.
One person. Well, we always get the numbers are down, right? Like people are
Yeah, they were-
looking side to side, not up and down.
He's the only Canadian license plate in the hotel at Spokane Airport.
Oh wow! Oh wow!
No kidding.
And then the road was closed between there and Spokane. It was a detour. I didn't notice it, and then I backtracked like 20 miles. Oh,
Why was that? Just road
I don't know.
work?
I wasn't paying attention.
Is there a paper agenda with all?
That's what I was for, because I can't even, all my stuff has even disappeared. I don't even have anything for this meeting, and I know I looked at this stuff.
Yeah, I did too, except the end camera, but no.
It was in Pacific. I don't remember reading this one. Did I just get out of it?
It was in correspondence before. It was, but there was maybe some changes to the agenda part.
Are we getting agendas?
Yes,
Thank you.
I just had to do a test to make sure that it was actually going to work.
We're gonna take a few minutes. We're just organizing some papers. And
Sorry.
I haven't stapled them, but they're not stapled. Oh, you got it.
don't worry, I won't start a meeting without anybody. And then we like to start on time, but
I think we're on it.
there's actually I've got counsel for that too. So it's like this, the board, and the workshop.
Stop, yeah, back there.
Maybe jam packed.
I saw the bar, golf course, on the bar side and things.
Hey, Lana, are you able to see if you can remove the read AI meeting notes from the meeting? I'm just unsure whose AI meeting notes it is.
It popped up and said Janice added it when it came on. Oh, it just removed.
I mean, I don't know how to get rid of it. Oh, okay. Perfect, thank you. So he can fix it at some point.
Okay, it's good to know.
Yeah.
Word it out.
Yeah, we're just waiting on
Printed material.
some printed materials. So we're waiting on Joe to get back to us. So we're just muted until then.
Yeah, we'll give them another couple minutes because now I'm worried the printer doesn't work or something.
Check, check.
Sound check. Coming through, Kate. Trisha, do you hear that?
Sorry, guys, we're still just waiting for some printed materials. Copiers eating 2 staff now, so we're eagerly waiting to find out what's happening. So just hang tight. I'm sorry we have a tight timeline today too, so I'm sure we'll get going quickly.
That's okay. We'll just have to ask responses to questions to be really tight.
I'll do my
Really
best.
short and concise answers when we have questions.
I hear you. Thank you, Kate. I hear you. I feel like I know that's directed. That's just one left over here.
We can just put a timer up on the screen and be like, okay, you have.
Maybe we can have the Bible that we have in our council chambers, Steve.
I feel like I just lost the game.
If you just let me give laser eyes to whomever is speaking too long, that might help.
Hey, if you got a cool Gen Z filter that you can put on that gets proper laser eyes, because otherwise we're gonna call this meeting to order at 9:12. Sorry, everybody, for just getting a little bit of printed materials for everybody, so we're all comfortable going through what we're going through. Let's start with traditional land acknowledgement, that we acknowledge and respect Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we are meeting today. And we have before you an agenda that was circulated last night, just some changes around the correspondence section, just to add some better clarity and more background. Can I have a mover or comments or anything else about the agenda? Don't want to move it? Tom, Cheryl? Any opposition? Seeing none. We have our minutes before us. Are there any omissions, updates, changes, clarity sought from the minutes? Someone like to move that?
So, do we move it?
I feel like we receive it.
I don't think we. I'll move.
I can never quite get that one,
Yeah. Move it, go somewhere.
Okay, the minutes have been going somewhere. And then that brings us to our first staff report, which is the Community Complex Quarterly Update from Ryan. Ryan, thanks for waiting for us, and tell us all the great things that are going on down at the facility.
Yeah, so sure. In front of you guys, you have the NDCC Operations Quarterly Report. And assuming that everyone's had a chance to look at it, I can just be open for questions unless you guys would like me to go through it.
Give us a like 7-minute overview.
Sure. So just to start off, Civic Center operations. So NDCC staff have discussed the operating season with the Civic Arena with the City of Nelson, and at this point the city is continuing to indicate that the snow load restriction of the building group will still be in place for this 2025-2026 operating season.
Mm-hmm.
And arena user groups were notified of this through the allocation communication. Facility hours of operation are listed in here. So it's got the aquatic and fitness center operating hours. And our annual shutdown dates have been advertised in our guide. So the aquatic facility will be closed for its annual pool shutdown from August 31st to September 14th. The NDCC Fitness Studio will be closed for its annual shutdown from August 24th to August 30th. And the NDCC Fitness Center will be closed for its annual shutdown from August 31st to September 2nd. Gyro Pool operation. So Gyro Pool will be staffed and operated this year between July 2nd to August 30th. And the operating hours will be 1 to 6 daily, so Sunday and Saturday. The arena operating season, so the NDCC arena operating season will run from Monday, August 11th to Friday, April 10th. And the Civic Center will operate from Saturday, October 11th to Saturday, March 13th. Project update, air handler replacement, so the tendering process for the NDCC rooftop unit, they're both the cardio and the weight room unit, that tendering process has closed. And apologies, this next section actually should be omitted from this report, because it's old information around the air handler replacement in the next line there. But roof assessment, an assessment of the NDCC pool and auditorium roof is being conducted to determine the composition and condition of the current structure. And this will include an analysis of the acoustic treatment applied to the ceiling of the auditorium. So in the pool area that's failed and fallen in multiple spots. Aquatic staffing, so this chart just shows that the NDC aquatic roster is sitting at 100% of the 2020 staffing levels. However, staff availability is a bit variable at this time, so we continue to focus recruitment efforts to meet the operational demands. Aquatic leadership staff continue to prioritize the development of leaders to further increase our supervisor capacity. And currently, the RDCK has aquatic postings for lifeguard and swim instructors. And future training opportunities will continue to leverage funding for new and prospective employees and internal staff for certifications and enhanced qualifications. And then just an update on the Neptune Swim Club swim meet on May 31st and June 1st. So the NDCC hosted a swim meet for the Nelson Neptunes at the facility. The event was successful overall. However, we noticed some concerns regarding space utilization during setup and aspects of volunteer conduct throughout the event, and we will be following up with the club to set clear expectations around facility use and volunteer responsibilities for smoother operation in the future.
Great. Thanks. Anything from commission that you guys heard that you'd like some clarity or questions for Ryan? Thank you very much, Ryan. Everyone looks satisfied with all the good work you guys are up to and the plan for this year, so appreciate the update. Okay, that takes us to 6.3, the NDCC expansion, Nelson Cares proposed housing project. We have a commission report from Joe, and so Joe, I'll hand it to you. We're all familiar with that one so far.
So through the chair, do you want me to put in the package? There is a slideshow presentation. We can just look at it on the paper, if that's okay, Kate. It'll be the one that if you opened it up, not the Macola one, but the one that's at the very last part of this presentation. I just want to quickly go through that.
It's a bit challenging because there's a staff report and then there's a bunch of, all the staff reports are at the beginning and then there's some slides and then some slides. So could you hold it up and show me which one you're looking at?
We don't have a file.
I do have a file.
I do. I have it here.
Let's take a minute.
I can put it.
Take 1 minute.
Okay. I'd like to just be looking at the same thing as everyone else. If I'm flipping back and forth between screens, then I'm not
We'll throw it
keeping
up
up.
on the screen and it'll help us all stay on track.
You should see the agenda, Kate. Is that correct?
Yeah, she can. She's thumbs up.
Okay. Sorry, don't look at the screen while I scroll.
There, you might have to click.
All right.
And just, sorry to interrupt before you get going, but just through the chair, I will have to step out for 15 minutes and you'll just see my camera go blank when I'm not in the room. So just for whomever's taking minutes, there will be some time here where I have to step out for a little bit.
It's the same thing.
No. There's another one out last night.
It's right after that. So, just thought, so what you have in your package is the report. In the report, it talks about the chronology of events that led us to today, all the different resolutions that were passed by commission and then passed by the board. Because some of those were slightly different when they got to the board table. There's the Nelson Cares presentation, and then it's this presentation. I just thought we would go through this one quickly. But Barb, which looks like, that you can see on the screen right there.
Yeah, I've got it now. That's something.
Yeah, otherwise Sarah can be our clicker. We'll get you over here so microphone can get you. Don't worry about it, who is that, so I'll watch on the screen.
So, as we're aware, there were two things that were going on here at the same time. One is community engagement, and the other is the Nelson Cares application process to BC Housing for a grant.
Mm-hmm.
So, in some ways, there's actually two public consultations also going at the same time. So note that the Nelson Cares presentation does talk about their presentation processes that they had to go through as legislative requirements for the city of Nelson, whether it be for zoning or those types of things. So we can just go to that next slide. So, the city of Nelson, just in the high level, identified that the land available for a potential BC housing project. So as the regional district, we collaborated in that process to identify the level of public support for a housing recreation expansion of the NDCC within the whole context of the recreation campus. So that did make up some of the flavor of that engagement process. So the RDCK included this proposed project in the 2024-25 Nelson, that's what I just said. The previous planning work for the regional district was done between 2012 to 2014. That master plan process identified the expansion of the fitness center and other publicly identified priorities for new recreation spaces on RDCK property and the city of Nelson property. So in particular in the master plan, it had this drawing right here actually comes from part of that public engagement at that time. So during that engagement, there was actually a first phase kind of drawing of a small fitness center expansion. That drawing on that page, right there, that blue box as Sarah is pointing to it, that is actually about half the space of what's proposed, of what was proposed in the Nelson Cares package for the housing and recreation development. And then it does show future that could happen there. And of course, that little thing that's up on the Cedar Street side, that's the house that's no longer there. Okay, we can go to the next slide if there's no questions. So part of the piece was, is the public willing to consider this combined piece? So there's a number of different ways of interpreting this graph. So in one way, there is some support, essentially fairly significant support for there to be a combined project. There is significant support in this for that property to be used for some form of recreational purpose as well. So I think the most important thing you could take is that the community did not indicate that it supports a housing only project on the site. Now, to note though, that there's pieces of that property that are regional district and pieces of that property that are city of Nelson. It's just that that's what that shows. There was not something that said the community through this engagement supports that. But we do have to realize that this engagement, you could say, would be slightly biased towards recreation. So just to note that we just have to keep that in the back of our minds, that is a strong possibility. Okay, and we can go to the next one. The engagement findings did find that there's a level of support for taxation increase. So that was between $25 to $99. So that's what this graph shows. So what all that the 25 to 99 means in this case is that in order to get past 50%, you have to get down to that 25 to 99. It doesn't mean that there weren't people willing to spend more, but just there's this, if they were willing to spend more than 500, that's assumed to mean that they're willing to spend 25 to 99. That's what that means. All right,
No,
so,
just so that whoever listens to this
yeah,
understands, that question was based, when you asked about how much, was based on if you own
a house, right,
$100,000 house. I think that needs to be stated often and regularly.
yes. I normally do, and you caught me. Good. So, yes, 500, because I noticed in the paper with my, is that the average house price in Nelson is 689 or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. So through the chair, just a comment I would make too is that this is based on users of the rec center.
Sorry, through the chair. No, we can't also assume that because the survey was completely open.
Right.
Anybody could answer this survey. So there's definitely, there's people that said no increase up to, but yes, no matter what, we have to consider that it was probably more informed by people who are participating somewhere on the campus.
That's what you
Yeah.
said on the
Yeah.
previous slide, so
Yeah.
I'm just also reiterating that would apply to this slide
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, but it's not just users. Anybody
A lot
could
of
have.
users would have
Yeah.
responded.
Yes.
Okay, great.
We had something in the report on the engagement that linked whether you answered how frequently you used the facility and a proportion. We have some sense of, 2/3 or something.
Yeah, like there's definitely, I think in the smallest, I don't have those slides, but there are definitely, the hard part about any survey is you don't know how all the answers link to each other. So we do know that there are people that said that they rarely visited some of the facilities.
Yeah, when we're sampling. But to Janice's point, of course, this is asking an absolute dollar question.
Correct.
Versus a mill rate.
Yeah.
And that's going to be different, of course.
And we can go to the next one. And so then, as we did through, I'm not going to go too much into these next two slides, because really we did these all at the public meeting, but I just thought it was important for it to be part of this. What's important here is the funding per year. So all that, this is S226, yeah. That $25 residential rate based upon that $500,000 house. So based upon the question that we asked, would generate about $344,000 a year in the service area that is currently S226. Okay, we can go to the next slide. The next slide just shows that if we were to take this and just apply it to the city of Nelson, the amount that could be generated using that same is less. And that's logical because there's less participants in the city of Nelson versus the whole service area. So this is just a reminder, again, this was all stuff that we presented publicly, but it's just the types of things that we have coming up. I just want to point this slide out in particular, because what made writing the report really difficult is knowing, and trying to keep the hat that I have on to also consider the pressures that residents of the city of Nelson have for funding their assets that right now are their assets to fund, and then the regional district assets, is that we do have significant capital work that we're going to need to be doing over the next 5 years. And we'll have a little bit more of a discussion about that on the last agenda item of the meeting. So just a reminder, that's what the expansion would look like if there was an NDC expansion. So just to note that these are conceptual drawings. These are not necessarily what would be approved through the ongoing process that Nelson Cares and the city of Nelson are going through. But in this case, you could see, all this is the highlight, said if there was an expansion, there would be a number of more units that would be available for housing. Okay. And this just shows that those units aren't there anymore in this drawing, and you can't really see it from this perspective, but there's a gap between the NDCC and that housing. So just to note, all that is to emphasize is that both options are available based upon these discussions. So just the final thoughts, is that what we've heard through engagement, and at the point that I did this slide, we're about 90% complete, is that we have heard that there's a desire, seems to be some kind of a flow of a multi-purpose space in the engagement. But we don't know right now whether that's repurposing existing space, building new space, we haven't made a decision on that, building new space, or identifying underutilized multi-purpose spaces like school gymnasiums, like striking some kind of a working relationship to use those spaces more effectively for the public. So we don't know those pieces, but those are three possible answers for the multi-purpose space discussion. Expansion of the fitness center. The addition of the Nelson Cares project could meet this need, which was also supported by the master plan in 2012 to 2014. The yearly lease, based upon work done by Nelson Cares, could be between $240,000 and $300,000. So to note that that amount is less than the $25 amount. So the $25 could generate up to $344,000. $300,000 would be some, if we're using a $500,000 home, would be somewhat less than $25. And I think that was the last of that slide. Yeah, so we can just, we can stop sharing if that's okay. We can just go to the report. So the report, for the Nelson Cares project, we do need to be sensitive that for that project to be successful, the regional district either has to show its intent of participating in it, of saying we are a participant and we will pay a lease. If we don't do that, and I'm not saying that either one of those answers is the right answer, but if we don't do that, their project becomes too uncertain to continue with an expansion piece inside. So that doesn't mean that that project stops and that there is no housing built. It just means it would be done without, and this is staff's assumption, part of what the recommendation is today, but that would be done without the use of regional district property. So I do just want to go to the alignment with the strategic plan if the project was to be included. To note that it does, the use, so I'm taking this strictly from a regional district point of view of the regional district property, not the city of Nelson property. If we were to commit to that project, it does allow us to develop relationships and partnerships, which is actually part of the strategic plan. It says you should be looking and seeking to do this. And the good part about that partnership is that Nelson Cares, if you were to look at their value statements and our value statements, there's a lot of shared values there. So that means that there's a philosophical alignment there. So that would be a good partner. Managing our assets and service delivery in a fiscally responsible manner. So we know that the complex is very well used and is quickly reaching capacity. And I would suggest that particularly in the fitness area, and I'm sure Ryan could attest to that. The process allows the regional district to explore if there are economies of scales of building an expanded center that is integrated into a housing project, making the best use of publicly available lands. And I think this is a concept that no matter what the decision is, we should always be considering. Are there multiple benefits that we could provide in any project? A regional approach to growth. Building this amount of housing will be difficult in areas without the necessary infrastructure. So all I'm saying here is that as a regional district, we do happen to be, whether it's in the city of Nelson, or whether it's in the city of Castlegar, or in the town of Preston, which is actually a city now, but is that we actually own significant pieces of land in those cities. And if we want to, or if we're considering how we can contribute to some of these other social needs, that we could be considering that maybe housing be integrated or some other thing that takes another pressure off for other land in order for there to be housing developed for, in this case. So I could see that there is this higher level of planning that we should be considering. Energy efficiency and environmental responsibility. I think what is really unique about this project is that it would be built to the Provincial Building Code Step 3 standard. That is what the intent is. And just to note that in the Regional District of Central Kootenay, we do not own a building that meets that standard. So that would be this section of building, if it was done, would actually meet a level of environmental building components that would meet a standard we currently don't meet. So what's important about the bylaw, so the legislative considerations, is the bylaw allows the commission to do this. So there you have taxation room, you can do that. We're allowed to enter into a lease, we can do that. This is all stuff that was considered in the bylaw. But this is also a significant expenditure. And also, although it's not legislatively restricted by the bylaw, when we did the service report, when we did that service review, there was an intent that projects that would commit the district to $250,000 or more per year would be considered, that should be considered to go to referendum or voter assent. Now, you know, I look at these things sometimes when we write them, and I go, you know what, we probably didn't write it detailed enough. What do we really mean? Because $250,000 in 2022, unfortunately, because of inflation, isn't the same, that's not the same amount. So if I try to apply it an inflation lens to that, the project range would probably fit within that intent. What are the risks? So the primary risk of any capital project, whether it be a significant a repair project like a refrigeration plant upgrades or actually complete renewal, or whether it be the addition of a new facility or a new expansion, is going to be inflation right now. That pressure and the uncertainty in the economy in the world is really going to make that's going to be the primary risk. For the project, for the actual project, the biggest risk is the RDCK commitment. I already talked about that. That Nelson Cares does require a commitment either way. It doesn't stop their project from going forward, but it does help them hone in on what they are applying for. The proposed solution, the RDC continues to partner with Nelson Cares at this moment. just to be clear, there is no evidence the RDCK could build this space to provincial building code step 3 for less and for less administrative oversight than what this project contains. So what that means is that project, although we have a input process as an owner in a lease space, is no different than if there was a mall being built. But the project is actually managed separately from us. So we're not project managing it, we're not doing the contracts, we're not doing the payment to contractors or anything like, so all of that administrative burden is not on the district or the city of Nelson. So I just thought that should be recognized. And based upon our research, especially from staff that came back from BCRPA, the per square foot cost that's being proposed in that project is significantly less than what we're seeing projects built for in the Lower Mainland. And in the Lower Mainland is generally, as a rule of thumb, 20% less than what we can do it for here. So this solution does not, but I also understand that at this time, that same uncertainty in the economy is also putting pressure on local government and taxation. So that is a real piece as well. So if the feeling is that the RDCK needs to go to voter assent, I don't believe that works for the project because that puts too much uncertainty then into the Nelson Cares project of planning for a project that includes an NDCC expansion, but is based upon the vote of at some later date. I don't think those two things are going to jive in terms of the timeline. So that is the challenge. I think we did the financial commitment. I think the other piece I just want to go is that the alternative solution is do not expand the Nelson and District Community Complex and do not donate the RDCK lands for the proposed Nelson Cares project. And just so you know, I haven't heard that part about not donating the land politically. It's just my feeling based upon many years of conversation is that the commission, and from my recommendation of myself, is that you wouldn't give up that RDCK land to the land that we have between us, what the present center is, and the city of Nelson wants. So those we shouldn't give up because that's the only place that you can add on to that building unless you're going into parking spaces, and we know the challenges of that. So what I have before you are two possible recommendations for you to consider giving to the board, that if there's any questions.
Okay, we do have some questions. Oh, it had a question. No, she doesn't have a question. Who else has a question? Thank you, Joe, for laying out the decision we can make before us today. I see Cheryl's hand.
Yeah, I have a question, just regarding the financial considerations for the proposed solution. Like, so we're looking, so I just want for clarity here.
Yep.
So we're probably looking at $300,000 a year for 35 years, right? And plus operational costs. Any idea what those operational costs would be on top?
So what I said in the report is that right now, in the Nelson Cares report, when it talks about that, it makes it clear that projection of 300,000 includes their estimation of what the shared utilities are. So those kinds of costs are covered. What's interesting is that in that project, because it's owned by someone else, it also would include anything that's required to maintain that envelope and that piece. So like the asset management piece of that would be included in that. So right now, even when we go to referendum, one of our weaknesses is we don't include that kind of a conversation at the moment. So those kinds of things are included. So what I see, there would be some fit and finish. We don't know what that is right now because of the stage that we're at. There would be equipment if that's something that we need. It could be an open space that's for stretching, like a lot of stretching. It could be a relocation of space. Because back in 2014, the other thing that we do know about the center is that there was actually part of that very first drawing was some discussions with commission about reconfiguring what is where in that building. So just moving things around because the current setup isn't ideal, particularly the administrative space. So that could all be, so that's the reason why I don't have that. But if what that space is really just a continuing of what we're doing, let's even just say that it's just an addition of fitness. That doesn't necessarily mean that I need to hire an additional fitness monitor or things like that. In some ways, it actually makes that space easier to manage because there's actually more room for people to participate. The things that staff are often managing is that patron to patron issue of who's been on what piece of equipment for too long and what those lists are, who was next, and all that kind of stuff. So that doesn't necessarily increase that side. It would increase some time for janitorial and that kind of work. But if we're going through discussions right now about how we make our operations more efficient. So I don't want to assume that that would be the case, because I think that there's ways that we can do work that could be more effective and wouldn't require extra janitorial staff. But I will say that no matter what, the one thing that I forgot to mention is that I do say in here that the one thing that I'm most uncomfortable with is actually not the cost of that expanded space. It's the commitment of that amount of money without a commitment inside our system right now. It's just a fact of long-term funding for capital asset management. We do not have that in S226, and we don't have that in the city of Nelson's operation right now. We're relying on a little bit of grants and those kinds of things to manage that. So that concerns me. And so, if I was looking at what I wouldn't want to leave behind is that we have a commitment of $300,000 a year, still without a commitment of the funding to maintain the NDCC as it is right now. I think we have to grapple with that problem. I don't think we can build. I think this being in the project is the least expensive way to add that addition, but we still haven't answered that long-term capital asset management problem.
And just to clarify, so you're saying the leasehold improvements are not included? Like whatever that, if it becomes washings or whatever, it's going to be more expensive than if it's just an empty room. Like any of those leasehold.
Correct. Yeah, I would expect that. I would expect that space, we have a lot of choice of what it could be, and so we could control that cost. But because we haven't decided what it is, it makes it very difficult to know.
So you're saying if we're engaged in that level of the project and we have a clear sense of what we want as it goes through development, we can drive those capital investments ahead of time and that will be baked into our lease into the future. Versus just give us a box and we'll figure out the rest later.
Yeah, and through the chair, and we can control what we do in that space determines that cost in that space.
Okay, thanks for those questions, Cheryl. Okay, any other questions?
Just follow up again, if you could just say one more time, please. So your bigger concern is that we don't have a plan or a commitment from basically the city of Nelson or ENF to continue to maintain the properties that are already part of the S226.
Correct.
Okay.
And just like, that's a bold statement from staff. That's, you may feel that that is the case. But I don't think that we could say that we have a concrete asset management plan.
Okay. Can I ask when Kate is leaving?
Kate's coming and going, I think.
No,
Yeah,
she's going
I'm
for
here.
15 minutes and then she comes back.
Yeah, sorry, I do have to step out a couple of times, probably just one more time, but I'm listening as much as I can. I do have a question as well, actually. With regards to the amount that the proposal was brought to the staff for the lease, I had a curiosity about like how that negotiation went, because my perspective in May when a similar presentation was brought to City Council was that the number was given and that was the number. So I was curious about, Joe, GM, you alluded to the fact that this cost per square foot is reasonable. My research told me it was quite high. And what did I look at? I had the, what's this thing called? Sorry. It's called the Canadian Cost Guide 2024. So that's pretty recent. And I was just interested in the way that costing worked out, because it's just a box, right? And the way that it was presented was that the cost was provided to us as a percentage of the Class D estimate, where this box doesn't have a percentage of the, say, kitchens or a percentage of the toilets and that sort of thing. So I was interested in knowing, like, how did that back and forth go between staff and the proponent, where we landed on this number, or was the number just brought and that was the end of the conversation?
The number was brought. Like, it wasn't a negotiation, because right now at the stage of development of the project, there's really, we don't have any, we had input into the possible size and configuration. Like, we talked about it has to be at least 2 floors of free ceiling height and those kinds of general kind of conversations. But just because of the stage that it's at, we weren't into that level of detail. The big thing to know, is that I can't really remember what, I'd have to look at just give me a moment. This is what it's going to cost in general in Vancouver for building rec centers. So there was a presentation on this at BCRPA. Like that, so I can make it bigger for my bad eyes. Between $5,400 to $8,600 per square meter will be the typical recreation facility building cost. That is from May 13th of this year. Just to put that into a new multi-purpose use record, and they don't tell you which the project is, but there's a new multi-use in Alberta that right now is being costed at $19,400 per meter squared. A renewal of a recreation facility in British Columbia, that's $25,000 per meter squared. A replacement of a 1982, and this is it's estimated replacement of a like-for-like replacement of a facility that was originally built in 1982 at $22,400 per meter square.
Sorry, but this isn't a rec center. Respectfully, this is a box so far, right?
No, but a rec center has boxes,
Okay.
so it's just that, the added complications of adding, like having something connected to a building, all of those things add building cost in. I don't think there's any research that we could say that we can do it for less. And considering that these costs includes our share of utilities, our share of asset management, that was everything that was also included. But Kate, to give it's a draft number.
Right.
Because that number is based upon the low, I guess you would say the lowest level of cost estimation at this point in time in the process.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. I need to step out for 5 minutes. So I'm not sure if you would be willing to just have a 5-minute recess, and then I'll be able to be with the meeting for the rest of the meeting. Sorry, I apologize. It's inconvenient.
It's a great time. Let's have a bio break until 5 minutes after 10. With the 7. So that's my part conversations around the coffee.
Okay.
Is that popular over there?
Call it is.
Sorry, yeah.
Her question is,
Recognize that guy? Totally sure.
as
soon as I walked out, it was like, right, of course.
principles, which Kelsey Ferris is like, it's a number.
I don't think
Right, trying to make a performer work, and then 25,000 is what slot in there, or costs come in less, or it's
Of course.
yeah, it's true now.
do we want to change the entry
That's exactly what they have in their proposal.
we can change it.
Yeah, well, the only thing is, that what? The risk that we,
Right, moments. Yeah.
it would, like, we couldn't, for them to build a project, they'd like to show some housing, right, which I build that.
That's why I'm like, are they validating a performer, but they need to slide in $29,000?
Yeah.
Dollars in the performer, and then regardless of what Katie thinks and what this is the box part of the multi-use. Yeah, we already have the other multi-use is already there. Interesting.
It's hard because we're at, even if we were sitting there, like now, talking about the building of a new building. You're at this, then we're at the estimation.
Yeah. Yes.
So bring it to receive it.
Are we, all right, okay, sorry.
Okay.
Hey guys, Kate's just dealing with some stuff right now, and so we're just going to be a little bit patient so she can return. We'll go slow. We have two big things, this and the civic strategic priorities, and she may have to come back to our correspondence another time if we don't get through it all. We're still possible. It's still possible.
You just need to like get the umbrella out of the car, the radio stop.
That's why it's talking slow.
Thanks so much for that. Sorry, I apologize. Of course, we always have technological issues when other people are waiting for you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, everybody. So I think we had left off with my question with regards to that square footage and whether there had been any negotiations with the proponent based on that number that was given. I found it interesting that that the way that that number was created from the presentation that we received at City Council was that it had like a percentage of the square footage, and also it was noted like as a percentage of lost possible revenue of the number of units that would otherwise be in that amount of square footage. Am I getting any nods from other people who were there?
Yep, you are.
Okay, so then I found that interesting further because if you do the math backwards on that, it was 8 units. And so then the same lease, what was the lease? Is it 3,000 a month or 30,000 a month? Or tell me the number again.
It could be between
20 and 30.
24 and 30 or 2500.
Right. So if you divide that by the 8 units of rental revenue lost, the math just doesn't math. So that's why I was really interested in knowing whether or not there had been a conversation between staff and the proponent on how we landed on that number. And I'm interested to know whether there can be further collaboration on that. I see that some work has been done here. Obviously, a lot of work has been done by the proponent and some work has been done by staff and community. But I'm interested in just really fleshing those numbers out to see where we can land for a win-win. And also I had a curiosity that I spoke to the proponent at that meeting in May and asked what about any kind of collaboration with like community groups and that sort of thing. So I think there's a number of pieces here that there's an opportunity to kind of look at alternative options besides the $24,000 to $30,000 a month that we haven't gotten to yet. So that's kind of my first comment, just with regards to the lease, but I'm also interested in other questions from the commission.
Okay. Because we had a conversation, Kate, just on the motion is up to, or to 20 to 25,000. Based on your conversation, I was wondering if the right wording is up to 25,000 to leave that room for staff to continue to develop the project with that purpose of not necessarily hitting the top end of the number. But Joe,
Through the chair, I would say the question is really, is there a commitment from to continue doing that without there being a commitment not to go to referendum? If there's it would be possibly not a good use of staff time, because that would be, so like if it costs right now, like let's say that it did cost 20, which is on the low side of their estimate, that's 240. If that is not palatable to go to enter into a lease without going to referendum, then we're in some ways stringing along a conversation with Nelson Cares that they can't, and that just creates too much uncertainty in their proposal. So that would be the concern. So like what I'm hearing, and maybe council's heard differently, but what I'm hearing is that certainty for the proposal is important to help facilitate its success. And referendum, in my discussions with the consultants and with Nelson Cares, creates too much uncertainty for that to be a part of that proposal mechanism with DC Housing.
Okay, so thanks for that, Joe. So so my first curiosity was just around that back and forth negotiation with regards to like where the numbers came from and where we could maybe get to if we had more collaboration, and then also that third party aspect of like, I know that the proponent heard loudly from lots of community groups and lots of sports interested folks about how to best use the space, and in these packages I haven't seen too much collaboration with those folks, and I recognize that we do always have in government some time pressures with regards to granting streams and those sorts of things. But I'm looking at this space and wondering how to get the win-win. And I just don't think we're there yet. Further, this is my second part of my curiosity. I think initially, many of the conversations, even at the open houses, were about, oh, this would be a space, but we don't yet know what the space will be. And I think you touched on this already, but I just wanted to clarify it. Because of the bylaw, it sounds like we couldn't take on a new service without changing the bylaw. And so right now it sounds like kind of we're socializing the idea that this would only be and could only be an expansion of the weight room. Is that correct? Am I understanding that now with more clarity?
Looking at the bylaw and the appendix to the bylaw, that would be looking at what the intent of the bylaw is. I would say that would be correct. That would be, well, for example, we have multi-purpose spaces in the complex. If it was decided, it just needs to be like something that is in general a multi-purpose space, realizing that right now, when I say multi-purpose space, I don't mean it as what some proponents or some groups think of that. Some people think of multi-purpose space means that it must meet competitive requirements for certain sports. Multi-purpose space for me can mean a space that we can do many different activities. It doesn't necessarily mean sports.
Yeah, like the space where there's childcare currently at the NDCC
Correct.
would be more
Yeah.
considered a multi-purpose space. And I think that have had some feedback from, say, volleyball and basketball folks that the current proposal, the ceiling height isn't such that it could accommodate, for example, volleyball and basketball. So I think that's important, really, just to say that out loud. Like, not only is there kind of this referendum component that I think Director Graham has alluded to, but also the kind of the restrictions within the bylaw based on the services that S226 provides, that we need to recognize those limitations and say them out loud, because that wasn't clear to me in September and October, and learning as we go here. Still interested in conversation.
Yeah, it's really true. It's a good, I think the part that we can't underestimate is the learning as we go. This is the first time I've ever been asked to look at a combined housing recreation type project. And the other piece that was made clear to us was that, for example, to go to 3 floors, to even have more clear space above, that would start turning that into, it would start making it less viable as part of the housing project. So I think in some context, when we had that conversation, there was like this limit to where that amount of space being included started to hinder the primary focus of it being of the housing side in order to satisfy the grant of the housing side.
Yeah, and respectfully, Joe, if I could just jump in there, I understand that. And I think that the levers that we have to pull here is that this space was initially and historically earmarked, so to speak, like the square footage, maybe not the height, the volume, but we're in, it's a brave new world. We're now talking about heights of things. And, in New York City, they're leasing heights above buildings for future. Yeah. Respectfully, we recognize that this like square footage was kind of earmarked for recreation. And while the proponent at this time, has that core direction of housing, this is a really cool opportunity for us to be super innovative and to take the time and to do the work and to maybe even bring in third party, whether it's sport groups or, I'm not even sure how else that could look, but and really use that public space that's in a really special location for the best public good. So I recognize that given the constraints of this BC housing call and so on, that we start to look at this 30%, which I think that number got lost somewhere along the way, and these construction costs and how to tie it all together. And it looks to me like overall more work needs to be done if we want to get to the win-win, which is originally why it was brought to Rec Commission, was to look for that win-win.
So based on the conversation, and this is a question to staff, so one of the recommendations here is around the lease, and it has an end further. I'm wondering, based on what Kate said, if it would be appropriate for that motion to have an end further, that the board directs staff to explore opportunities to collaborate with community organizations to develop partnerships for the purpose of recouping capital and operational costs. Right? Like, there's an element here where if Commission decided and the board decided our role serves as a patient investor who will say we'll cover the top end of this 25,000 so the project can proceed with the idea of a box. But the end further directs staff to then develop a win-win situation within the volume we have available that includes community organizations and includes looking at how we might fit and finish that space without necessarily doing it all ourselves. And I'm just kind of floating that at staff, and I'm also floating at you, Kate. You can't see me look at you, but does that, like, saying yes to the box, saying yes at the top end of that 25, and then setting staff to go keep developing the idea. And I see Janice has.
Yeah, and I'd like to hear from Commissioner Newell and Commissioner Graham, because I would not be in favor of that amendment at this time.
Sure.
Chair, I think what I'm saying is that more work needs to be done before anything can be proposed to the board. And as GM has mentioned, they're looking for a guarantee. And from my perspective, at this time, we're not there yet.
Dennis?
Sorry, I am not in favor of your suggestion either. For a number of reasons. One which comes just when you read it is that we're also not supposed to be subsidizing it in capacity. I don't think perhaps a group that would come in and pay for some and then that would be their space. We already sort of have that problem. Some people might not consider it a problem within the civic center. So if we're looking for public good, I think we have to be a bit cautionary about who we go out to ask for support, who then decides, well, we paid for this, so we want it, because groups now could be a partner with Nelson Cares. Nelson Cares doesn't have to, these housing projects have daycares in them, they have other things in them. So if there was a community sports group that saw value in partnering with them for space in some capacity, the group could already seek that partnership with the proponents. So I'm not. I think what Kate's asking for is that exploration. I would agree that perhaps enough work hasn't been done, but I think what you've added there, I can support that.
Yep. Carol?
I have a recommendation, but I could talk first. I don't have any questions.
I think people are curious what you have to say.
Well, I think, it was interesting. Went to the city thing and I heard Councillor Panera say, geez, do we really need this? We got 25 yoga studios in town, or whatever he said, right? So that set one line of thinking. The 10% taxation increase in Area F in 2025 set another thought process. The $200,000 extra loan payment thing for another 4 years or whatever until 2030, I guess, set another thing. All of this overlaid for me on what a great idea, what an opportunity, So it came down as when I first heard of this possibility is, this is very interesting. But as times evolve, I've lost my super enthusiasm for it. After the organics referendum, to which we went to referendum, I chose to go to referendum because the numbers looked good on the survey. Area F people said, we're kind of curious about it. And then it turned out they weren't. They were absolutely, those that didn't get involved once they heard about it were upset, angry. The public hearings were actually quite they were fully opposed to it. Okay, so, but I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. I would say it's not my decision, let people decide. Give them some numbers, give them some specific numbers. As Director Jackman has said in the past, include in any referendum question the long-term costs, not just the loan costs, whether it be the operating or the asset management or what have you. Over time at this table, we have, over the last 10 years, heard from groups often. And I'm not sure that this piece, which is a great opportunity, really meets the niche of what we've heard from people, whether it be the indoor soccer or the pickleball or what have you. And so in a sense, my feeling is that we're spending this $4 million or whatever works out, this loan pays off, to not really address the key kind of deficit that we may be experiencing in indoor, as Joe keeps saying, expensive indoor recreational facilities. I think it's been touched upon by Kate. First, I'll say this. We are underfunded in our capital reserves. And so if someone said to me, hey, can we up this by, $10,000 a month to add to our asset management plan, I'd probably say yes. And it may be what's ultimately recommended by our asset management development thing that the RDCK is going through. But also, I think another big piece of it is the pace of the decision making, and Kate touched upon it. I was at the golf course, and a guy, he's a smart guy, newer resident to our area, but got quite involved, and he's, legit guy, CPA, this type of thing. He said, boy, that's a lot of money. I went, hey, the RD is thinking of putting into this proposal. So even the public sees it and says, $25,000 a month, wow. Even if they don't break it down to $25 a house, but they do say that's a lot of money. So my recommendation would be the second recommendation, and I agree with Joe that the land should, I couldn't quite understand why it was divided in those two, and I didn't get a chance to talk to you ahead of time, Joe, but now I understand fully why it's either one or the other. In this case, we can't kind of go halfway. So that's where and because of the timing that seems to be for the Nelson shares, we can't say, hey, give us another 6 months to decide where we're going to land on this. I think their time frame is different than that. So though that's not my question, that's my thinking right now, and I think I've touched on most of the things that I had thought about. So that's where I'm at with it right now.
So thank you. I would echo a lot of what Director Neal was saying. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And the time period is really super long. And I think if we were in 2030 right now and our loan was paid off, like that might be a better time for a project like this to come forward. You guys were all here at the budget meeting and saw the people from Area E who were very upset about the large increase this year. And this project, from my calculations, would add at least another 12% increase for this lease. And I guess also what concerns me is that the leasehold improvements and the operational costs are unknown. So just to sign a blank check is something I don't do in business and I wouldn't do here. And I would support it going to referendum and putting it to the people and saying, is this what you want? Because if they want it, then that would be great and I would be happy to support it. But I don't know. And from the feedback that I do get from my residents, they're saying they would not, even though I know we've got a survey that what Tom alluded to again was what happened with the organics. We had a survey saying that it was, it was supported, and we went to referendum and it was a 90% no. So that concerns me about relying on a survey. And I think the timelines here are just unfortunate. And I don't believe, from me, I know there's limited land left in Nelson for these kinds of things. Like, we don't really believe that this is the only opportunity that there will ever be. And it's up to the city of Nelson what they want to do with their lots. If they wanted to do a housing project on it, I mean, that's beyond our capacity, but I also would not support donating the RDCK lands to the city of Nelson for a housing only project. And I think, as Joe had mentioned, that would be the only spot left to do an expansion. So I just feel this is just, it's unfortunate that we don't have the time to go to the people and let people decide, because that would be what I would have to insist on in order to support this.
Okay. So, would someone like to make one of the recommendations a motion?
Well, I'll move. I didn't want to be presumptuous, but you know where I sit with this proposal. Well, I move the second recommendation.
Okay. Seconded.
I got nothing else.
Yeah, so that the board will not donate the RDC lands to the city of Nelson on 824 Front Street for the Nelson Care Society proposed housing project.
I have a clarifying question.
Go ahead.
My assumption is that it also says that we won't participate in the project. But it's not said in the recommendation, and so I don't want to leave it with assumptions, so I just wonder if we do need a slight rewording of it.
And further, I had a question about the wording as well, like, because I'm still learning these wordings. It is true that it could always come back in a different form at a different time with different numbers and all of that. It doesn't mean like indefinitely in perpetuity.
Like right now, we would need to donate the land, consolidate the lots to have them say yes to a project because we're committed to it. So I think this is the mechanic of if we're not donating the land, we're not consolidating the lots. Their project is proceeding forward as a housing only project to be adjudicated at the city.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Then I will amend my motion would read, that the board will not donate RDCK lands to the city of Nelson on Front Street for the Nelson Cares proposed housing project, and further that the RDCK will not lease space in the Nelson Cares project.
Don't know if the two needs to be put together.
Why would that?
Yeah. Okay, so that's an amendment. So Stuart, do you want to just comment on the amendment?
Well, through the chair, the project proposal requires the land to be donated one way or the other. It's entirely for housing or includes recreation. So the fact that the land is not being donated to the city of Nelson, that in itself covers the second part of the direction.
Okay, then I won't.
And there'll be rearranged. There's a building being developed right beside us, so who knows what conversations around easements and driveways and exits and stairs like we did with the last Nelson Cares. We really made sure there was lots of access around the side of the building. Like there'll be those kinds of discussions.
Well, let's also speak to the fact that if the City of Nelson OCP change gets passed or whatever, it will contain this RDCK lot, and it will allow the building under the new zoning and then the OCP change that's required for the Nelson Cares to even do their project will allow whoever owns that land on a go-forward basis to build the lot line. So you actually, the RDCK still has room then with the lot line adjustment that would come with the change to the zoning to be able to build lot line and you get more than you get your 5,000 square feet in there. If 5,000 square feet was some kind of magic number, I'm still lost on the magic numbers. We get so stuck on the numbers that my mind just, but just so you're aware that we are looking at rezoning all of that land.
To make it more useful, yeah.
May I just ask a clarifying question? So is that connected to the public hearing process?
Yes.
Thank you.
The public hearing process is just about changes to the OCP and a change to zoning that corner of land. That's what the public hearing line, June the 23rd is in regard to. Doesn't mean that this couldn't come. I mean, the other thing in all of this is that, I mean, if there was flavor, yes, if I could, sorry, Chair, I stepped off, there's a motion there, but if there was some flavor to go to a referendum, I mean, I guess one could always ask the opponent if they would consider waiting for the results to come back, because the intake for this housing call, although they would like to be in at start date, is going to potentially carry on for a year. It's an open submission. So once the submission date drops down on, I believe, I'm gonna get it wrong, I think it's July the 31st.
Yeah.
It will stay open for a period of time. But I think that we have to feel more confident about whether or not we want to spend the $60,000 to have a referendum to potentially hear a no, or a yes. That's another contemplation, because it's still, none of this is done without digging into the back pocket and getting out the wallet and the checkbook. So really, that's the
You know, it's interesting. I know we're very much considering, you know, how can we find the win-win timelines, struggles, the realities. There may not be support for it, but Nelson Cares is able to make its own decision based on our not arriving at a conclusion, right? Like, they are capable of doing that. They're capable of just saying, we don't want a partner. We went to explore it, and I'm hearing more conversations are wanting to be had, and I think there's an appreciation that they can make a choice to go in July without it, or wait to see if something more comes of it. There's almost a sense I'm getting around the table of a desire for no action and to keep drawing the owl on this one, even though they'll have an impact, they are able, they're their own board, they can make a choice. But it sounds like people want to know a little bit more about, can they get some sort of improvement on these lands in the cheapest way possible with some economies of scale that meet some sort of long-term process, because I think there's a recognition that if we come back in 10 years to do the same thing, it's going to cost more overall. And at this point, it'd be probably 2030 before a building was asking us for a lease at this point. So is it possible that we are still at no action if we just appreciate that Nelson Cares can make its own choices, but the fact we're not done?
What are you
You know,
asking? I didn't understand.
Well, I'm just saying, if we just don't pass any motions and we say, can we find more information about numbers and suss out more about what we want to see on that lot, independent of a project, it allows Nelson Cares can decide not to partner either way, put their application in.
I think through the chair to the chair, I think as a decision-making body, we should make a decision rather than make a non-decision. I think that's the appropriate thing to do. And perhaps the way to accommodate further conversations would be to amend the option 2 to add something like in its current form, or with the current lease amount, or something like that, that the donation to the city of Nelson not go forward based on the current proposal. I'm not sure if that kind of lands us in the same place, but then we are making a decision and we're not just leaving something in the ether.
So if there's a friendly amendment that the board will not donate the ski lands to the city of Nelson on 824 Front Street for the Nelson Cares proposed housing project in its current form. I think that captures the intent, and we've given a decision. Is that okay for a friendly amendment?
No, I'm not in favor of that. I appreciate I just don't think it's a friendly amendment, and I agree with Kate because I don't have to justify it, but I agree with Kate that we should make a decision, and nothing stops us from changing this decision in the future if new information came, and based on what we know now, at $25,000 a month. Was, I'm saying, that's what it is, so it's not a friendly amendment to me.
Okay, does anyone want to amend the resolution in that sense, or care to have that wording, or are we okay that staff has just heard that direction?
Yeah, I can withdraw my amendment since it doesn't have a second.
Well, we're checking. I disagree with, and I would second it. I like the language. I think it's so clear. So just a yay or nay on the amendment. Now, all those in favor? 3, okay, it's amended. Okay, the main question, all those in favor?
Can we just figure out what that?
Sorry, yeah, I couldn't see the vote.
Is somebody telling me what it is, please?
That the board will not donate the RDC Gate lands to the city of Nelson on Front Street for the Nelson Care Society proposed housing project. Sorry, Kate, I already forgot the one. As proposed in its current form, is that what you said?
Yes, that is what I said.
In its current form. I apologize.
And I don't, as you, well, as at least as the chair knows, I'm not much for word smithing.
Yeah.
But I would actually like specifically for the Nelson Cares project in there.
It does say that, yeah. For the Nelson Care Society proposed housing project in its current form.
But of Nelson, for specific, like after 824 Front Street, specifically for the Nelson Care Society proposed housing project. Because if this project doesn't go, there could be a time that they want to donate the land to the city of
Please like to put the word specifically.
Yeah. It's specific to this project that that the RD is not giving this land.
Okay.
I don't want to get.
I hear you.
It could be some other project that lands there that the land could be donated so that those lots will be consolidated.
Okay. Does everyone agree that's friendly? The word specifically?
Because this is the project we're talking about this project only.
Okay.
Yes.
A lot of things could happen on that corner.
Yes. Are we good with the word specifically, or do we have?
Sure, no, I assumed that, but it's fine to, I don't know where it goes.
I think just before Nelson Cares.
It's specifically for this project.
Yeah, because there could be other projects there, and
Yeah, so we're saying we're open to it. People want to have this conversation. It's just this isn't where it needs to be. That's fair. May I call the question? We comfortable with calling the question then? Let's see, hectic contemplation.
No, I'm,
Okay, all those in favor? That is passed. Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
Just in the matter of time, I'm going to see if we can go to the Civic Center. So on 7-1, a summary of a project for strategic priorities has been received. So the City of Nelson, the Strategic Priorities Fund that the province has announced allows regional districts to put in 3 applications versus the municipality's ability to put in 1. The city will be putting in for the forced water main going up to the sewer plant and is requesting that the RDCK consider the Nelson Civic Center Arena roof upgrades within its allocation funding. And we've got Colin here today who sat very patiently through our meeting, and I really appreciate that. I'm going to just pass it to Colin to tell us about his project. If you want to lead anything.
Through the chair, just as per the note, under the recommendation to know that that we're bringing as a regional district, we're bringing all projects that may be considered by the regional district for the regional district's 3 potential applications to the fund to the July board meeting, and that the district only has 3 applications for across the entire district. Colin, would you tell us more about the project that we're considering? Oh,
I just, do we have a sense, sorry, Colin, but as Joe was explaining, do we know how many so far are going to be presented in July?
through the chair, no. Not at this time. We have a number, I'm getting emails right now from potential projects.
So we're different. So, but,
Yep.
sorry, Colin, rather than at the end while I'm thinking about it, so are various commissions similar to this now proposing things, and that's how it's getting to staff to get to the board?
Through the chair, more from staff looking at our current, the work that we have coming up, what are other projects that are specifically in the hopper. So for example, for this one, what we would do in the time, if commission said, yes, include this thought in it, we would sit down with the city of Nelson and also say, well, we also have a refrigeration project that is specifically at this facility. Is there a way of combining these projects together? How could we possibly do that? So I don't think by saying have this considered, there's still going to be conversation with city staff and regional district staff on maybe what the total scope is. And I think what the letter outlines is the vast scope that is on the property right now, but maybe wouldn't necessarily be what we bring to the board in July. Fair enough. Is that fair comment?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jim.
Colin.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for the opportunity to present this for your consideration. I think a lot of folks will have heard that the city's been engaged over at the Civic Theater and the dance studio there over the last year in dealing with an issue related to snow loads on roofs, and within our new building code that there's a much higher standard that's required. Old buildings can get, for lack of a better or more official term, grandfathered if they don't show any sign of distress. Unfortunately, at the Civic Theater, you can see in some of the wood grain that you can see that there had been loadings that had been causing distress, so we couldn't write it off and say, no, this is behaving sufficiently. And same thing in the arena, you see in the wood purlins, you see that some sign of distress there as well. So in looking at a way to do this repair, what is being looked at is by adding more trusses, intermediate trusses between the existing ones that are there, enhancing the purlins, as well as dealing with the footings, because of course all those loadings come down into the footings. Where there's some ability here to enhance the facility, just because of the nature of what we're doing is going to, in order to enhance footings, you're going to be ripping apart dressing rooms. You're going to, there's a lot of disruptive work that occurs in there. And as well, in order for us to physically do what we need to do and getting steel up into the rafters, in order to do this work, we need a proper work surface to work off of. So within this proposal of what we've looked at in order to be able to do the work is establishing a proper concrete floor within the facility for us to be able to work off of to do the repair that we need to do. The benefit of having the concrete floor, of course, is that during the summertime, it's a sand floor that's in that facility right at the moment, since we're not able to really use it for anything. Whereas if there is a concrete floor in there, it would be something where there's more opportunity to make use of that. So the SPF funding says that they'll fund up to 100% of the project cost, up to $7 million. In looking at what I have right now for a Class D estimate, and the reason why this is Class D is we're still trying to work out a bunch of technical components. Most of it's the approach and how we're doing the work to try to bring the costs back in. But currently I'm sitting at about $9.1 million.
I just want to make it very clear that in no way is the city requesting that the RDCK would pay money above that $7 million if this funding application were to be made, that we're not looking for that, but what we're asking for is the line on funding for up to the $7 million. It's a September 12th application date for that. And as was stated earlier, the reason why the city isn't able to make this application is we need to make an application for our sanitary force main that conveys all of the sewage from the airport lift station up to the sewage treatment plants. And that's a project in excess of $10 million. And we are only allowed by the rules of this funding to make an application for one project. And so that's the funding that we've that we've made. However, this is an issue that has come up in the work of working with these facilities, and this would also be applicable under the recreation and sport infrastructure piece. And as Mr. Jerko has indicated, there could be some other ways in which some of the things that the RDCK is looking to do could dovetail into this project as well. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. So through the chair, like normally we get like a staff report when we see this thing. So there's no like RDCK staff report. So I guess my question would be to Stuart. And it would be, like, Stuart, are you aware of other projects that are coming?
Through the chair, yes.
Yes, several. So we have no idea. So you're kind of, we're going, this is.
If I could, Chair, go ahead. The Chair, it's not up to this commission to prioritize the projects for the regional district. That would be up to the board. So supporting this, I think you need to look at it in a vacuum and say, do you support an application being made for this absent any other applications? And if you do, you can move it forward to the board, and then you'll see a larger report from Joe, from possibly from Fire, outlining all the potential projects that could be applied for under the infrastructure stream for 3 and the capacity building for 1, and then make the determination at that point.
So just to summarize, this would only get it on the list. That would be all we would be doing today if we supported it. It would just get onto the list for the RDCK board.
Through the chair, yes.
Okay, and if we don't support it today, it would not get on the list. Okay.
I'll move to. Oh, we have a mover. Seconded by Janice. Kate, you had a question? Potentially? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I have so many windows open. Thanks for that. Yeah, my question was a little bit related to Commissioner Graham. I was curious about like a staff report because I was trying to navigate the agenda there. And so I do have the City of Nelson report, which starts on page 50. And then I got a bit confused regarding the motion. Is that up at the beginning of the agenda? Sorry, I just got a little bit muddled.
It's in the agenda underneath 7.1.
Right. Okay. That's the old.
So the motion on the table right now, moved and seconded, is that staff are directed to include the City of Nelson Civic Center information for consideration as one of the 3 priority projects for the regional district of Central Kootenai.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which will come to a future RDCK board where we will evaluate all the opportunities from a RDCK strategic perspective.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on this one? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carries. Thank you. That moves us on to our correspondence package, and I think there's a note on the first 2 that maybe Joe, you want to talk to you about the whole rec stuff.
Yeah, so through the chair, just so the commission is aware, we held our all rec agenda setting yesterday. So previously, earlier in the month, we had Cascard District Recreation Commission had a similar correspondence from the Castlegar Junior B Hockey Society. And at that meeting, that commission asked that there be a meeting with all elected officials or all services that are impacted by the changes in Junior B, in particular AIJHL, have a chance to talk about all of the impacts together to understand it. And so what we discussed yesterday at All Rec is that the one place where we have an actual meeting set up that you can give direction to staff or do a formal piece is at All Rec. So it is included as part of the All Rec agenda. And Craig, I believe our strategy is to invite a representative of the teams to be there. Craig has been much more involved directly with the correspondence between the teams than I am.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair, we do, certainly after this conversation, we'll reach out to the franchises, to the executives, and even the league and invite them to the All Rec meeting next week.
So, kind of knowing that, and in the interest of time, that this will come up again at All Rec, that's why I wanted to bring it up.
When is the next All Rec meeting, please?
Next Wednesday.
Yeah, next Wednesday at 9. The 25th.
At that meeting, will we be able to ask questions like, what revenue do we get from the Nelson Leafs? From what percentage of the beer sales is an asset to Rec 5? Like, how much money do we, it's alluded to in the correspondence, but, you know, the benefit we gain,
Through the chair. Through the chair. Yes, and I think Craig, maybe there's something to add there.
Yeah, through the chair, I can answer that question about revenue, specifically for the Nelson Leafs. Other than the rental of the ice, which I don't have that number, they do rent the ice for practices and league games, and we don't get a share of their liquor sales, but we do receive 15% in lieu of revenue. And the Nelson Leafs in their correspondence from November from the president, they indicated that they have, I think they've generated about $460,000 or $442,000 in revenue and given back to the RDCK about $65,000 within 1 or 2,000. So it's about 15%. And for comparison, sorry, go ahead.
It's in the documents here.
Correct.
No, what I meant was, sorry, Chair, and we gotta go. Is that part of our conversation to get an understanding of the scope of their impact? That's all I was saying, or if not, could it be part of our conversation at all?
The intent is that it's an opportunity for you to hear from all of the clubs because part of the strategy of the district is to try to bring all of those negotiations together in the future and make sure that we have some standardization.
Yeah, as opposed to my motion that said, hey, make them special and let them.
No, well, that's why we have All Rec. So if we're comfortable with that for now, knowing it'll be discussed in a week, then I'm going to take us to public time quickly.
Can I just ask,
Yeah.
will this come back the next, I can't attend All Rec next week, I'm in Victoria.
Sure.
Because I have more in the weeds questions about this that probably might not ripping off of Newell. Will we see this back again based on the outcome of whatever the chit chat is next week?
Yeah, depending upon what the direction from All Rec, because All Rec could make a recommendation straight to the board for July. It could.
Right.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Right. Okay. But if not, could we please, could you just already note that I'd like to see this come back?
Through the chair, we've taken that direction of Alana just to note that, just to put the topic back on the next commission meeting as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, good call. Okay, if we're okay with that, I would like to have us do public time at 11:02. Public time? Bill? You're the public. Did you like that?
Because I can't see that screen.
Yeah.
Is there a representative from the sports council?
No.
No.
And, okay. Then, yeah, I'll certainly.
Phil, I'll get you to stand up so you can be heard remotely.
That's fine. Could I ask, first of all, I submitted some questions to the commission on February 3rd, and I received response from the chair that it's going to be added to the subsequent or next meeting, and here we are 2 or 3 meetings out, and I don't see it on correspondence today.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to check in with Jenna. I gave direction and things came together with the reports pretty fast. It's my apologies. I gave direction and I don't know how it got missed off this agenda. We'll discuss it. The intent was the intent and direction was given to have it here, and this came together fast, and unfortunately got missed again. It wasn't
Again?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, subsequent to that, then, what is the status of the rec community campus public engagement report as far as that we're in phase 3, and where are we at in the timeline in phase 3?
Sure. So the working group met this week on phase 3 to receive the initial draft summaries, and so there will be a final direction being given to the consultant, and there'll be a final report coming out. In a sense. Oh, Trish? Do we know when we might have the final report released?
Yeah, through the chair, Sarah and I are meeting with Rob tomorrow to review some of the commentary from our working group meeting. So we will do that, make those amendments, probably shoot it back to the working group. And then once it's finalized and designed, it would then go out to the public. So you're asking me to guess a little bit on Rob's schedule and any of those design people that might be involved in that final reporting piece, but I'm going to say safely, and Sarah can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to say safely, I'm going to say 3rd or 4th week of July.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, at this time, we have an in-camera portion, so it is the opinion of the board in accordance with Section 90 of the Community Charter. The public interest so requires that directors, alternates, and staff be excluded from the meeting. And further, part of the council meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter considered relates to or is one of the following: labor relations or other employee relation matters. We have a motion to go in camera. Cheryl, Kate. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Do I need to go to a different Zoom link for that? We just stay here? What's observer? What does that mean?
We have to lock the meeting.
Yeah, Landon's going to remove them and then lock the meeting.
Oh, I see. I get it.
You're okay. As long as
Okay.
you're in a private space.